Hey, Carly.
Hello.
What do we have on? This one. Okay, great. I guess we're just waiting for people to sign in.
Good evening, everyone. Carl, I think we have quorum. Maybe. I don't think we're missing one. There she is. Hi, John. Welcome, Giselle.
Hi.
Hi, Jennifer. Hi, Xavier.
Hey there.
Yes, we do have quorum. If you want me to move forward with the opening remarks, just let me know.
Please.
Good evening. Until further notice, all meetings of Manhattan Community Board 11 will be conducted by video conference. Links to register to attend the video conferences for each of our respective committee meetings will be published on the meeting's calendar on our website. To avoid crosstalk and help the meeting run effectively, panelists and attendees are asked to keep their microphones on mute when they are not speaking. Those participating by phone can dial *6 to unmute. If you wish to share a question or comment, you may do so by utilizing the raise hands function. I will be monitoring to ensure that all of your hands are recognized. Those participating by phone can dial *9 to raise your hand. Committee members will be called on first and then attendees. Please keep your questions and comments brief. And hand it over to Jason, and then once the meeting is called to order, I will do the roll call attendance.
Good evening, everyone. Calling the meeting to order. We could take the attendance.
Okay. Arroyo?
Here.
Brooks? Goldblum? You won't be here. Green?
Here.
Malave?
Here.
Meyer? Meyer?
Watch your foot.
I thought I saw her name.
You got the top part of what? What are you talking?
Yeah, she was on. I think maybe she dropped off.
Okay, that's fine. Padilla?
Here.
Okay. Santiago?
Here.
Villanueva?
Present.
Wu?
Here.
You have quorum.
May I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Move to adopt the agenda. Xavier Santiago.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Aye.
No. Meeting starts 6:35. Is our presenter present?
Good evening, I'm here.
Hi, thank you, Sarah.
Hello.
I will
Hello.
turn it over to Carly and she'll get you started. Thank you for sharing your
great.
time tonight.
Sure, thanks for having me. Okay,
should be
should I go
able to-
ahead and share my screen? Oh,
Yes.
okay. Okay, it's not giving me the option to share screen.
You should be able to, if you go down to the bottom panel, the green.
I'm clicking on the green share screen button. Okay. Can I email you perhaps the PDF and then somebody else could share the screen? I'm on an iPad, so it might be a different functionality.
Okay. I had just made you the co-host. I'm not sure if that'll help you, but if you email it to me, with my email.
Okay, just one sec. To Carly?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Okay, I went ahead and sent it. So, okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for having me join you this evening. My name is Sara Malaika, and I'm with here in New York for the U.S. Census Bureau. I know that you were all one of our 2020 census partners, and we thank you so much for all the work that you did this past year to get out the count. And I wanted to share with you today some of the information about our surveys and how to get data for your district. And I know that, it might be a little bit boring to think about numbers or statistics, but I want you to think about it as like a story about your neighborhood or a way to like see your community in a different way. Great, thank you for that. So yeah, I just, we had we had a lot of plans for the year, and we know we had a very challenging year when the census started. So we really want to thank everyone for really pivoting and being able to find creative ways to get residents to fill out the census. With your help, we were able to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. And the data that we collected will be released this spring. It's a little bit delayed because of the pandemic, but we want to make sure we get that it's done the correct way and that we get the right accurate information. So I will be in touch with you all when those numbers are out. Those counts are going to determine our federal funding, as well as our congressional representation in Congress. So very, very important. And also we have this spring from around April to June, we're going to be having data summits. So I'll be sure to invite you to those as well. Those are going to be sessions learning how to work with the data when the 2020 census data becomes available. So if we can go to the next slide. I know people know us most from the decennial census, which happens every 10 years. but we actually have so many other surveys that are happening all the time that you can take advantage of. And some of those are, for example, the economic census and the census of governments that take place every 5 years. And all the surveys that we conduct, confidentiality is guaranteed for all the surveys that we do. So it's the same as during the 2020 census. Confidentiality is very, very important, and it goes across all our programs and surveys. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So one of the surveys that we do is called the American Community Survey. It's a very interesting survey because it goes into a lot more detail. You know, for the 2020 census, it was only 9 questions. The American Community Survey asks a lot more questions. And so we get a lot of rich data about the people, the population. And so a lot of information that we publish is actually from the American Community Survey. And every year, about 1% of households, or about 3.5 million households, participate in that survey. And we also have a lot of demographic and economic surveys. And in addition, we also do population estimates. So for example, if we know the population, we can use the death rates, birth rates, and migration rates to calculate or project how big the population is going to be in, for example, 3 years or 5 years. So that's some of the other programs that we do. Okay, we can go to the next. Thank you so much. So how can data help us? So we have a lot of tools available to you. Our information is free and accessible. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about some of the information we have available and how you can use that. Okay, we can go to the next slide. We have data sets about a wide range of information, from housing to healthcare to schools to population age distribution and ethnic backgrounds. So all kinds of information available. Next. So first, I'm going to quickly mention our demographic and housing surveys. Next. So as I previously mentioned, the American Community Survey is an ongoing survey that we do that captures a lot of rich data. Every year, this is an ongoing survey. So every month, we're conducting this survey. American Community Survey data gets published every fall. And so the most recent up-to-date information we have as of today is from 2019. It's really great information for educators or principals who are looking at their neighborhood in terms of education needs. Healthcare, the healthcare industry can find information so that they can help serve more vulnerable communities. Community groups or nonprofits can use this information. Journalists, you know, if they're writing a story about a neighborhood, they can use this information. So again, it's a very rich trove of data. And we have if you can go to the next slide, we have a lot of resources available on our website. Let me just mention that the geography for the American Community Survey is really interesting. You can look at something from as big as the nation, or you can look at the state level, the city level, or you can go even down into block groups. So if you want to get really get detailed information, you can do that. But again, we don't publish you know, specific information about a certain house or an apartment building. You know, it is, you know, privacy and confidentiality is of the utmost importance. So again, you can't like look into someone's apartment or anything like that, but you can see detailed information and demographic information about small areas in a neighborhood. Okay, next. If you want more information about the American Community Survey, we have a lot of resources available online, and I'll be sure to share this PDF with you all, so that if you want to, you know, click on any of these links, you can definitely have that, if you want to look into that further. So next. So we also have our American Housing Survey. I know a lot of the community partners I work with are, you know, always thinking about gentrification, how we can keep, you know, our neighbors and our family members in housing and stable housing. The American Housing Survey is really important for that. It's a longitudinal survey, which means we survey the same houses and the same households over a period of time. So that way you can really look at trends, like what's happening, who's moving into the neighborhoods, who's moving out, what's the condition of the housing, what is the price of the housing. So this is a very important survey. This is sponsored by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, but we conduct the survey. Okay, next. We also have our population estimates program. As I mentioned, we can use existing data and current rates to make estimates of what a program or a population is going to be in some future time. That's very useful if you're planning a program for the future or planning on funding for the next 5 years, for example. You will need to know not just what the population is now, but what it will be in the coming months and years. Okay, next. We also have a number of economic surveys for like businesses, industries. You can go to the next slide. The economic census happens every 5 years. And it's really important for businesses that cater to other business industries, or small business owners even can use this information. It can be very helpful for marketing. Nonprofit neighborhood groups can use this information. So again, we have all kinds of data points related to economy, industry, business, and that happens every 5 years. We also have a survey of small business owners. I know, you know, a lot of small businesses right now are really struggling. And sometimes business owners tell me like, oh, I got something in the mail. From the Census Bureau, do I have to fill it out? You know, we really encourage everyone to fill it out because it does give us very good information about what's happening right now on the ground for business owners. And, you know, a lot of this information is really important also for like employment agencies or things like that, because some people track what industries are growing, where there's job creation, where there's job growth, where there's job decline. So again, very important to know what's happening on the ground in terms of businesses, so that, you know, local municipalities or nonprofit organizations can use that information to make better informed decisions for our community. Okay. So what's next? So as I mentioned, this spring, the data from the 2020 census will be coming out. You can go to the next slide. And we are going to be having data summits. And those are going to be like data trainings about different kinds of information that we're going to have available. As soon as I get the program of the data summits that will be available, I will definitely share that with you all. We'll probably have some that are more catered towards like educators or healthcare workers or nonprofit organizations. You know, even though I'm part of the 2020 census team, we're not going to be with the Census Bureau forever, probably only for a few more months, but we want you to know that these resources and these data sets are available all the time on our website. And we want to be able to give you the tools to find the information that you need for your work, to better inform your work, your proposals, your projects, and things like that. So I'll definitely keep you updated when we get those data summit program set for New York. Okay, next. Thank you. So we also have a Census Academy. It's at census.gov/academy. If you would like to learn more about how you can find data online, we have some little videos at our Census Academy that kind of show little tips and tricks of how you can find certain data points. And these are very short videos, like 3 to 5 minutes. So, you know, it's just kind of like short, fun ways for you to like find little tools online to help you in whatever information that you're looking for. Okay. And we also have our Statistics in Schools program at census.gov/schools. This is a program for educators. We have lesson plans and resources for educators from pre-K all the way to 12th grade. And we also have resources for English as a new language for adults who might be, you know, learning English. And we really encourage, you know, anyone who, even if you are, you know, want to do something at home, we have activities also for, we know a lot of people are at home right now with children. So we have a lot of like activities for at home use as well. So we really encourage everyone to take a look. We have all kinds of lesson plans for all subject areas and all grades. And we know that data analysis and critical thinking are going to be really important skills for the future jobs. And they're also, data analysis are also very well-paying jobs. So we want to make sure that children are getting used to data literacy at a young age, of being exposed to that all through their education, so they can be prepared for the future. Okay, and we have a lot of other resources online. We are always hiring because we have so many surveys going on. So we are always hiring for field positions at the local level. And we have a lot of other, you know, data visualizations and other resources on our website. I encourage you to take a look. This website here listed at the top is data.census.gov. That website is a new streamlined platform for getting data for all the different surveys we do. It's like one place, because before we used to have different programs and different surveys, and you had to kind of go to a different website for each of those. But now we have one streamlined tool, and that's at data.census.gov. And it's there that you can get information specifically for your community district. You can get information just for Manhattan or just for New York City. There's a lot of filters. You can filter by year or geography or by topic. So I really encourage you to take a look at that tool. It's a really, it's a new platform that we just started back in the fall. You know, I encourage you to take a look. And if there's any specific information you're looking for budgeting needs or any planned programs that you have coming up, I'm happy to help you. Or we also have a data dissemination program that happens all the time. It's not just for the 2020 census or the 2030 census. It's happening, you know, it's career Census Bureau employees. And their job is to help community groups to find the information they need. So if there's something particular that you're looking for, a certain data set, we can kind of help you figure out where to find that, or which table would be the best for what you need. Okay, next. And here's my contact information. So as I mentioned, I'm with the Census Bureau for, you know, several more months. So I will be keeping in touch with you. I hope to stay connected with you, and I'll be letting you all know when our data summits are happening this spring, when the 2020 census data comes out. So thank you everyone for listening, and I'll be around if there's any other questions that I can help answer. And also, if you guys have any thoughts on any best way that we can stay connected through the coming months, please let me know.
Thank you, Sarah. Your presentation was outstanding. I need not speak for our membership when I say this is the committee of numbers. So if we could get those stats, it definitely best works for our facts. I have one question, but I'll hold. I want to see if the committee of public, if anybody has any questions relevant to the presentation, please speak now. If ever, hold your peace. No hands, I think. So my question was to, we use the word liaison a lot. How can we get somebody from the organization to stand in our meetings monthly so that we could collaborate? And my example, just to give you, like youth and education, the district attorney's office is there every month, parks and recreation, the parks department's there every month. I need not tell you, for some of the biggest challenges, like even in our budget responses that we're working on now, though we're really prolific in our speech, we're challenged sometimes. We're not defending it with the numbers, with the statistics. And I think that in building a working relationship with the census, that's why I agreed to this presentation, would be definitely in the interest of the board as a whole. So I
Okay.
wrote down the information for the census.ask data, but I was just thinking that maybe whoever's the rep or director of our area, if there was a way that we can just build a relationship that every month or every quarter, you guys could come in, and just be a part of the conversation with us.
Okay, yeah, definitely. So I can definitely be your liaison until our program is over, until the 2020 census team is over. We're just a temporary team. But after that, we have our data dissemination program, and that's an evergreen program. It's happening every year. These are career Census Bureau employees, and they can work with you specifically on getting information that you need. Oh, cool. So you have the data.census.gov up, I think. Yeah, so there's all kinds of information that you can get. If you can let me know what specific topics or kind of what specific information you're looking for, we can work together to find that. We have so many tables, so many data sets available. So I can kind of show you some little tips and tricks of how to find that.
That'd be perfect. And then I think just to use this program, I'm assuming this is Carly, right? That's you, Carly, moving it around.
Yes.
She's a whiz. She's the best.
Yeah, Carly, you can go back.
Maybe we could get a training set. Not necessarily, again, I want to keep it that we have our liaison efforts with each other, but more importantly for the training, I was thinking maybe before the end of our fiscal year, we usually break out in June. So maybe if June we could just set up a training, so we can show our committee members how to use it. And I'll have a conversation at the executive level, because I think the chairs should know how to use it as well. Because
Absolutely.
The
Yeah,
membership
that's a great idea.
The membership engaged with this process it'd be 10 times more efficient, as opposed to us, pulling op-eds and, data that can be challenged as our some of this like this letter we provide, our local officials utilize it to advocate for our sector. So we want to be on point as much as possible to limit counter arguments or claims. So it'd be very beneficial, Sarah. And I thank you for your presentation. I don't know if that interests anyone else to ask some more questions, just to see kind of the line that I'm going down with it. Example given, like youth and education is always asking for more schools and more seats. And it'd probably be interesting to use this to see the exact amount of seats in our district.
Right, absolutely.
And then the population, right? Our last estimate was 98,500. I need not tell you, I think that number is beyond skewed at this point. And out of those 98,000,
it's more than 100,000, definitely.
Yes.
All of Manhattan is all the districts in Manhattan are over 100,000. Yeah, definitely.
And our last statistic on unemployment, just again, this is all facts from the data that you guys all put together in the last year. with this summary. It showed, I'm talking to the whole committee as well as you, Sarah, where these are the scenarios that we want to be able to defend it. And if the numbers are off, it'd be a challenge. Like where I think our last estimate on unemployment in our district was 51%. And that was pre-pandemic. So I could only imagine today.
So yeah, now I mean, the numbers from 2019 and what's happening today is probably completely different. So yeah, we have a lot of work to do.
Yes,
going
I
forward.
agree. And just to prep you, where after this, our next stage is to work with our local officials and actually advocating at City Hall. So, I'll let you coordinate with Carly and hopefully we can, not hopefully, definitely we can figure out a way to bring our work ethic together with your organization. So that way we can best serve our constituents.
Okay, super. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Sarah.
We did have a hand raised, but
Take it, please.
I
I
think
feel like
Xavier.
I'm talking for everyone.
Xavier, do you still have something you wanted to say?
No, I just wanted to say thank you. That's it. It was a good presentation. I also want to say thank you to everyone who participated, especially on our board, with getting the census done. I've been on so many conference calls. Thank you, Carly, for coordinating, being involved, and Sarah and everyone. We had a couple members of our community board who were doing census work as well. And we had with both of our open streets, we were able to get tables set up and tell people how they could easily do it online. And yeah, so it took a collective effort. Do you know what our numbers were by chance? Our total participation compared to 2010?
I don't know. I can't answer that. I can try to find out, but I know that we counted 99.9% of households. So that was good. And actually in some areas we had a better response rate than in 2010. So that was, encouraging. So yeah, and I thank you again to everyone. We worked with a lot of different community groups in your area, and a lot of great enthusiasm and a lot of hard work. So, we were able, it's definitely something that we can be proud of. It was a very difficult, challenging year. Nobody could have planned for last year. So thank you again for everyone who helped out to get the count out, because we're going to need those numbers, and we're going to need our funding for the next 10 years.
Yep. Thank you.
We also have Giselle's hand raised.
Please go.
Hi, hello, good afternoon. I have a question. You mentioned 99.9% of the households were counted, which is really good. Do you know if you guys did something different, if you took like a different approach, or was it just that more people participated? Like, what was the strategy this year compared to 2010?
Well, I think one of the main differences for this year was the online component. And that made it very accessible to a lot of people, but that was also a barrier for a lot of people. So I think just having that extra, we also had the phone option, which was new. So I think giving people multiple options, whether it was online or by phone or by mail, and letting people pick whichever way was most comfortable for them, was really great. And then also, again, we, as we did in 2010, we have a very robust partnership program across the country. And so we work with a lot of local community groups to like schools, nonprofits, houses of worship, things like that, to get the word out. So, it really takes all of us at all different levels to like really encourage people to fill out the census. And we came through this time. So we're really thankful, and we hope that we get some good data sets coming out in spring, so that we can, have some updated figures.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Sorry, I have a follow-up question. It's really encouraging to hear that the response rate was so high, and especially in the midst of the pandemic. And I'm wondering if the census team plans on carrying like that method forward, even when hopefully the vaccine is distributed and we're not all remote anymore.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Well, is the census team planning on continuing this method of outreach even beyond remote world?
Yeah, I mean, our partnership program is kind of one of the key parts of the decennial census. So it's definitely something that's going to continue. It's like it kind of grows every decennial census. It gets bigger and bigger. We have, I think, like more staff, targeted for partnership. So it's definitely something we're going to continue. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And then I was also this is a question for the committee. I have the screen up and I just wanted to know if it would be helpful for the committee to walk through the data set. I know that
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so,
I-
yeah, I was gonna do it for you, but it's kind of hard. But I can tell you maybe what to click, and then if that's okay, if you want to see like I don't know if we have time, but I can kind of tell you how to show you how to get information specifically for your district.
is that something the committee would be interested in?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so can you go back to data.census.gov? And then below that box, if you can click on advanced search. Yep. Okay, so we're going to do an advanced search. We have different filters. So if you can see, there's years. If you want to click on years, and we're going to choose 2019 because that's the most up-to-date data that we have so far. Yep. Then if you go to geography, this is really cool. So for areas where there's more than 100,000 people, we have something called public micro use data. So if you scroll down, it's like, there it is, public use micro data area, PUMA or whatever. Yep. Okay. So now let's click on New York. Okay, super. Now there's so many Pumas, but if you go to the search at the top and type in Manhattan, it's easier to find it that way. Yep, and then that third one, yep, District 11, there you go. Then you can go back to the filters. So you see when you add the filters, the little blue tab comes at the bottom. So we've chosen 2019 and District 11, East Harlem. And then you can also go to topics. So this is kind of like what information you're looking for. So let's just to like try something, let's try like populations and people or something. If we want to get like yeah. And then we can click on, like, for example, language spoken at home. People ask me about that all the time. Like, what languages are spoken in my area? Yeah. And then you can click on the search button in the bottom right, the blue button. So, so based on those filters, these are all the tables that come up for you. And if you scroll down, it'll show you how many tables we have. If you scroll down, let's see, it looks like, so there's 40 tables or 40 data sets that match those filters that we put in. So you can click on any of these, like age by language spoken at home. That's kind of a fun one. You can click on any of these to get the data set. So if you, and then if you look right under it, it shows you the survey or program. So that this data, it tells you it's coming from the American Community Survey, for example. And then also, if you want to also notice that under each of these tables, there's a table ID number. That's really important as well, because if you want, for example, let's say you find this table and you're like, this is really useful. This is exactly what we need for this committee or this program that we're doing. Then just make a note of that table ID, because you'll want to compare it to, like, let's say when the 2020 data comes out or 2021, you can compare that data for that specific table. Because sometimes it's kind of hard to find the same exact table twice, because there's just so much data available. So if you find a table that you really think is very useful for you, just note that table ID number so you can find it again. So you can see here, this provides a data set here. It looks like it's comparing, it's only giving you the information for District 11, perfect. And then if you click customize table, then you can export this. If you want to save it, you can export it to Excel. And you can kind of manipulate it as well. There's different things you can do at the top with all these buttons. But yeah, you can export it to an Excel, save it on your computer as an Excel file, or a CSV file. So yeah, there's all kinds of, this is just one example, but there's so many things that you can do, so much information you can find on here. So yeah, I encourage everyone to take a look and see what you can find. Oh, there you are. Cool, you found it. Yeah. So yeah, there's so much cool, and this is a new platform. It's a new tool that we have. So it's kind of like a lot of people are still kind of getting used to it and finding, you know, all kinds of different things on there. So.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you. Does anybody have any questions specifically about that, about navigating this or using data or anything you've seen? Giselle, hand raised that, but I think that might have been from before, but Giselle?
It was from before, Carly. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Carly, thanks so much for being my my demonstrator today.
No problem. Okay. Does anybody else, anybody have any questions? Oh, Andrew's hand's raised.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to explain this to us, and you know, we look forward to following up for more on this, because we always are being asked to justify every single thing that our community needs, and this is certainly going to be helpful for that.
Absolutely. Yep. Happy to help in any way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. If there's no other questions or comments, I'd like to move the agenda along.
Thank you, Sarah. And I do just want to say to the committee, you know, the census website, I'm happy to see that that there has been like some revamping to that website. In the past, I've had a hard time navigating it, but it does seem like it's easier. And I know one tool that I like to use, if not the census data website, is Social Explorer. And I maybe in the future I could do like a little tutorial for you all, because that's another useful tool to help visualize it. I know there's been a lot of conversation about like comparisons between districts, and I think putting it all on a map and seeing what that data looks like is really, really helpful and powerful. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Is that a website, Carly? Is that social?
Yeah, socialexplorer.com. I know that there's different levels of usability based on membership. I know I have one because I'm also a student. But I've adjusted the account so that it's usable by the staff. So it's like not a password I use for other accounts. But I would be happy to show you. It's a really neat tool.
Okay, thank you. Social Explorer.
Yeah. And it's populated from census data, all the surveys that Sarah just had discussed. So, yep. All right.
Favorite part. Let's pull it up. Can we start with the budget register? Just want to thumb through it. And as we go through it, guys, if you're the liaison, you know, jump in. Let's try to do this as construct. Oh, this is awesome. I don't know, Carly, I don't know if I don't know how some of the other liaisons did it, but we put our comments I think in like land use, and I don't know if it just got pulled over or something like that. There was just commentary there. But I did see the written response that came out from the committee on the draft, so thank you. I'm only pointing that out because I don't know if if anybody else did anything with their trackers, and you know, if it didn't get, if you didn't like let Carly know or something, it'd be helpful now. Okay, so let's go through it. Anybody got comments? No?
We have a,
I
I'm sorry, I can't see the hand raise function. I apologize. I have to keep minimizing and maximizing my screen.
we have a hand raise in the attendee section. It's Stephen, it's your cousin.
Mr. Villanueva,
Yes, Mr. Chair, Villanueva, how are you?
another day in paradise, living the dream.
Thank you to the SDN committee for having this meeting tonight. Thank you, Carly, for that information on Social Explorer. I was completely unaware that it existed. I'm calling in just to follow up. A few of our members on the Land Use, Landmarks, and Planning Committee, when reviewing our 3 budget items, there's one new one that one of our members, Andrew Padilla, he put in a great request to ensure that there's some funding for digital ULERP trainings. After further dialogue, it kind of segued into this whole planning together bill that's coming through City Council. I just want to make sure that the SDN committee did get the comments that were written by a few of our members. I know Andrew and as well as Jessica Elliott submitted their comments. We had a general consensus on the committee that those responses are perfectly fine. I just want to make sure you guys got them.
Yes, I saw it in the draft that we summarized today that Carly sent out.
All right, 10-4. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, Angel had put them in, and I mentioned this in the email. The draft that was sent out, it's still in draft mode. It's not complete yet. I know that I have to put in something for Department of Sanitation for Parks Committee. That's not yet complete. I know that the Housing Committee didn't have any comments, at least we hadn't received anything, and the conversation at committee didn't result in any comment. So that's, yeah. And I know that I think Marlene was still working on some of her agendas. I mean, her committees, agencies. So yeah, I just wanted to let you know that this is not by any means finalized. And if you have any comments or additions or revisions, they would be greatly appreciated. And Giselle has her hand raised, Jason, just so you know.
Yeah.
so
Giselle?
aside from what we sent Angel, do we have to go to the tracker and pretty much fill in our part as well?
I did as just a matter of record, but if you sent it to the staff, they have it. And if you guys reviewed the draft that you got today, if you go to your areas, you'll see if those comments were incorporated. That's the task of the liaison. So like example, the bringing up housing, I don't know who's on the housing committee that's on our committee. But I would think that the alarm that's been brought up about housing in our district would be a major issue. Though I did see in the funding, in the world of funding, if you review the budget, HPD, Department of Homeless Services, wasn't hit as drastically as other administrative agencies. So that might be a reason, but I can't speak to that. I'm just guesstimating. I don't know who's on the housing committee that's with us, but if you'd like to speak, that'd probably be. So then that way we have an idea, because we missed today. We missed our deadline. That's pretty much what's being said in a very nice way, because we didn't get everything. And on Tuesday, we have full board to vote on this. So, you know, me, Carly, and some of you will be working, burning some midnight oil to get this done, so that way we can have a complete document. Because I need not tell you, any errors, omissions, challenges, questions, concerns will be brought up at full board. And if there's a challenge that necessarily the chair is not able to respond to, I'm going to look to the liaison of the committee to address that.
Xavier has his hand raised.
Please.
Yes, I think, how many people do we have? John's on the committee for housings. I think Stephanie is on the committee, if I recall correctly. I'd have to look at the roster, but we did have some comments. I'm not sure why they're not in there. I don't have them in front of me. That's in my other computer with my notes, but I'd have to go log into that one. But generally, just we did cover a couple of the things with NYCHA requests and responding to those as well, from if memory serves correctly. But yeah, so I can touch base with Jeremiah and John. Do you recall by chance? I just don't have those notes. That notepad is by my other machine.
Actually, I really don't, Xavier. The thing is that because we spoke about so many topics at the last meeting, you know, like from red basically forgiveness and basically helping landlords. There was so many topics. I really don't recall.
Okay. All right. Could we scroll down to the housing then? I'll try to pull off a memory real quick for you.
But Xavier, with all due, let's stick to the process of what we're doing. We're gonna go top down. Any of the comments from any of the committees that are missing, we just try to get it to us by tomorrow. I don't want to, you know what I mean? I don't want to draft it live, especially if there needs to be some coordination with the staff liaison from that committee, as well as the chair from that committee, if that makes sense, with all due respect. So I'd rather do top down, Carly, so then that way we just go across, look at it, make sure it's fed. I don't think every item warrants a response. I've been stating that a lot, because even in full board, those of you that heard, this is a response for advocacy to the mayor's office for the budget that they already provided. So if an item was funded or an item's being tracked, or more importantly, you don't know, we need to do some homework before putting that in a stance inside in this letter, right? We want to be as fact-based as possible with this letter, because even if we as individuals or board members do not attest during, forgive me, I'm having a moment, an elderly moment. When we go to do what happens at city council, I forgot. From like March to May, they do their consultations, testimony. Thank you. I couldn't think of the word. The testimonies happen. So if we don't get to a point where designating, at least this letter will allow our local representatives to further advocate for the district. I know some projects were financed this year, and it's exciting to see that. But as I always state, the work never stops. I'm happy for the victories, but we need to keep focusing on these challenges. So LLP, I know for the first two items, they did not, which is licensed landmarks, they did not want to respond. If you notice the response, agency accommodate within existing issue. What I haven't been able to determine, Carly, if there's a way to state whether the response is from OMB or HPD. If we could get that, I think it's just easier on the eye, because then when you go across, you'll have a secondary response, which I think gets defined from the administrative agency. And one thing I found interesting in these first two items, I'm just using this example with license and with land use. These two items, they gave us that they will accommodate with existing resources. And then if you scroll to an expense, the expense request, I'm assuming it's OMB, that's the agency response, where they say they'll use existing resources. And then when you get into the detail, they say we don't have the money. So I don't know how they're going to use that's just like a scenario. So that's out of those three items that came out of land use, we're only responding to one, to advocate for more funding for that. Do you concur, Andrew? Or did, because you were at the committee with me.
I'm sorry, did you concur on
Like
exactly?
the concept of what we talked about yesterday, land use, where
Yeah,
two
so
of
the concept, I agree. I just wanted to make a clarification on language with regards to the digital ULURP, but otherwise I think we're on the same page.
yeah, no problem. I mean, anything with edits, like as far as, you know, grammar, terminology, a sentence, you coordinate that with Carly or,
Yeah, for me,
it's not
it
an issue.
wasn't necessarily grammar, but I don't think it's that big a deal. It was just we did mention the comprehensive planning framework, and I think it's important to allude to it. But I wouldn't want it to make it seem as though we are requesting this money because of that. That is
Yeah.
a secondary reason, but our initial request is because the land use process has already changed, right? And that's why we need the funding, irrespective of what the city does with the comprehensive process. So I was just sending along clarifying language that makes that clear. So it would, instead of what it says now, it would say the land use process in New York City has significantly changed because of COVID-19. Given that the land use process has now moved digital, our community needs to understand how this process works. If the city truly expects our community to quote unquote plan together, we need and deserve the support to do so. This is of particular importance given the stark digital divide currently experienced in East Harlem. Is that fine on your end?
Andrew, if you could just send that to me.
Oh yeah, I'm reading
Yeah,
off of
I
what
think
I'm
that
gonna
would
send you.
be helpful for me.
Absolutely.
Jason, would it, since you're talking about land use, and do you think it would be helpful for just as terms of, as far as process goes tonight when discussing these, if we go by committee?
It probably would be more beneficial to do it in that
Yeah,
fashion.
I think so too.
Because if the whole sheet, it probably, you're right. Yeah, so like in this is a better sample. So you see the first two items, this is to the committee. The agency will accommodate. And even if you look at the third item, right, where it's new, it says the agency will try to accommodate this issue with existing resources. That's the same response for the other two HPD items for DCP. That's a generic response is my point. You go over DCP is telling you the agency supports the request, but funding is not available at this time. And that's an item that was a red flag that said we need to emphasize the funding for this particular request. Because just so for the, not really the older members, but the newer members, we're going to have district consultation in the summer where we're going to sit with this agency and we're going to say, how are you going to do with your existing resources? We're trying to advocate for you. So I don't want to really spend too much energy because I looked at the draft and I see that we want to fill in the blanks. And I don't think necessarily there is too many blanks. I think we're responding to every item as required. But to consolidate the information and get to the point, as you've heard from our elected officials in the last 3 trainings, it's more efficient when it comes to advocacy, if that makes sense. Does anybody have any questions, concerns on that? So I think land use is tackled. We could jump to the next one, economic development and culture. I saw the response was in red. I don't know if that's because that's the response from last year, right, Carly, I presume?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
yeah, and that just means that, I mean, all the staff are all working on our own committees.
yeah. So you're
and
still waiting for Angel for economic development, because I know Giselle was working with him and Marissa. Marissa even called me about it, so.
Yes. Carly, I sent Angel each and every response, how we were going to respond, tracking codes. I can send you the email as well if you'd like, or you can just get it from Angel. But I sent him pretty much all of our responses for the requests and like our statement pretty much of requests. And if you need to see it, I could send it to you.
So like there's only these 4 items, right? It's supposed to request city funded capital appropriation required to initiate the project. So example, item that you see that where they're telling you we need money, it's because we have to advocate to our local officials, right? And again, we prioritize that, right? The dire need is health, housing, and education from what was drawn out this year. But these items still should be addressed, again, to just keep track of the process, if that makes sense. So those first two items, I would think that we have to address to the elected official. In our case,
I have a
Diane.
question.
Yep.
Because we spoke to NYPL and we actually, I don't know why we received the same response as last year, because during the meeting, he pretty much explained to us that they have funding. They found, I believe, a total of $28 million for the Aguilar and the 125th Street Library. So they're both actually in process of getting to begin the renovation, or to continue the renovation, I would say. And then the only thing that, I mean, we need to follow up on all three, but I think the only thing that they didn't really know if there was going to be enough funding for was the extended library hours and the library programs.
So
But
see,
the
I love that you gave us three situations there, and that's a great example to learn from, right? The items that they know that are funded, they're working on, they're managing. We don't need to put that in this response letter. This response letter is to advocate for items that they're uncertain of or aren't sure that they're going to have the funding, right? And that's, I guess that's the best way to properly utilize this process, if that makes sense.
I just want to flag that Stephen's hand is raised again.
Yep. I don't know if you have to unmute him or.
Hello?
Yep.
All right, is there a liaison from the Economic Development Committee, or perhaps somebody from the Budget Committee can answer this question? Did we get a response on workforce training? We had called out specifically local law 196 pending milestone of March 1st, and I want to know if there was a response.
I can't scroll down the track is in front of us.
Oh,
Workforce development, it's right there. I missed it. It's probably up. I'm sorry. I don't know how
I'm sorry. I don't know.
that right. You can't see my finger. There's a digital divide scenario due to the rising unemployment. The agency will accommodate this with existing recourse sources. The agency agrees with this request, will accommodate in part. So they provided partial funding. We need to follow up a district consultation, but the economic development doesn't have to wait for district consultation to follow up with that organization.
10-4. Thank you.
No problem. So I don't know if you have any questions or concerns, Giselle. I know you've been really vetted in this, and I know you have our district manager working with you. And Marissa, I guess I flagged it because I saw red. And from what I understand, red means we didn't provide a response. So we're using the responses from last year.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I just missed the whole last 10 minutes. My phone died, but I'm
Don't
back
worry.
on.
Okay.
We'll
We'll talk after the meeting, so that way it
Okay.
doesn't hold up the
Okay.
process for anybody else. Youth and education. I'm sorry. Let me do this right. Well, apologies, Carly. Does anybody have questions about what happened with economic development? Okay, thank you. Youth and education. Jason, Carly.
Jason, I'm not sure if you want to speak to the conversation that we had on Tuesday about the budget.
You can go.
I'll jump in. You guys have a brand new response. I know I read it earlier, so I just didn't know if you had anything else you wanted to add or if there was or subtract.
Yeah. Well, really what was just discussed, we talked about after school programming, I think that was pretty much what they wanted to prioritize. I think there was just a general sentiment, a general frustration with the recycled responses. So I tried to demonstrate that in the committee's response. I don't know if it came through to those who read it,
But I appreciate you flagging the passion, because the other thing I'm looking for is what's, I don't have a good word for it except a grassroots action where, you know, we need to start proposing and recommending certain committees to go and advocate at the testimony. So if youth and education is at the point where they feel that they're being I don't have a prettier word than blackballed by these responses, then I definitely think that we should have a conversation with David and Jason and figuring out how we could get somebody down at City Hall to advocate for the kids in our district.
what was interesting, well, what was interesting about one of DOE's responses, it was regarding the gap in hours for basically the request was for an expansion of the pre-K, 3K after school programs to cover the hours between 3 and 5 p.m. And in previous fiscal years, DOE has responded by saying that they didn't study it. And then this year, they responded by saying, please refer to provided response previous fiscal years. And it's just like, you know what, like how many have we seen? How many responses have we seen where agencies say that it requires further study, and how often do they actually follow up? So yeah, I tried to demonstrate that a little bit of frustration there.
I felt it when I read it. I don't know if anybody else. I definitely took that sentiment. I liked also the other things that were written about it. But me reading it and not being a part of the committee, if I was unplugged from the district, I would definitely hear like, you know, you guys are just like pacifying and spoon feeding us as opposed to telling us what we need so we can work together. That's what I took from it. I don't know if anybody else has any comments.
Sorry, I'm struggling to raise my hand because it won't work.
And I promise, you know what? Jump in. There's only 5 or 6 of us. We don't have 100 people. You don't have to raise your hand. I know it's formal. Like I always say, Robert's rules is needed when we get crazy. So do jump in, because I want us to be engaged in this process.
So I'll take that as you haven't called on me, and I just want to say I appreciate those edits, and I think that the tone and tenor of our report in general, like I think in the introduction we need to be clear that, you know, this isn't just a problem at Education Committee. We're getting the same response for a lot of these, right? So I think that we need to let the city know that we know that that's how they were acting before pandemic. So we don't want to hear a response that this is just about the pandemic. That is part of it. And I think that, you know, we can talk about broader general comments for the intro once we're done on these items. But I think that is important just as a theme for the letter, that yes, COVID's bad, but as clear from the education piece and from what we're looking at these other budget items, you know, that's not the only reason that we're at this moment in this community.
I agree.
So just thank you.
Okay, noted. Unless anyone has anything else to add about the youth portion, I am so generally I don't look at the chat as I'm managing the screen, but I did comment
I don't disagree. We'll get anybody who has comments. We'll recognize you to speak. I don't disagree with you, Charlie. I'm respecting the body by being here, not watching the chat.
Okay. Eva has her hand raised. Okay,
Does
go ahead,
anybody
Eva.
else from the committee have anything from, hold on one second, Eva. Does anybody else have anything from the Committee for Youth and Education? Okay, Eva, go ahead.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
sorry.
I have to let the members go first.
No,
Sorry.
no, no,
Go
it's all
ahead.
good. I just want to repeat what I said on the chat. So for youth committee, we talked about the after school program, but also the summer job program. That's one item. And then I just want to say, in case you guys want to go to City Hall to give a testimonial or whatnot, I just raised my hand to help. That's why I joined the meeting today.
Oh, thank you, Eva.
Yeah.
We appreciate board members that want to do the work. I definitely will write your name twice. I'll speak to David, and of course, this will go through executive, obviously, out of respect for the leadership of the board. But you know, and to respect process. But anybody who's interested in representing a particular issue on behalf of the board that's driven by a statement the district needs, please reach out to me. You all have my number or email. So, and I'll ensure I summarize a list when I meet with the executive committee this month. Because the goal is to try to get that going by April. I know they start the testimonies in maybe late March, but stay tuned. There'll be more conversations. Thank you, Eva, for volunteering. And you caught her comment, Carly, from the
Yeah,
all right.
so I said after school programming, but in the response, we also respond to the summer youth employment program, which I believe is the jobs program that she's referring to. Is that correct, Eva?
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
I just want to call that particular item out, just among many things.
Thank you, Eva. We appreciate it. Carly, next, Human Services. When you get a moment, of course. I know you're typing. Human Services, Rakeem, Jennifer.
I don't know if Jennifer has anything. Looking at the form that Carly sent around, I just saw that every request basically said that they agree with it, provided that they have funding. So it sounds like, Jason, that's a space where we just have to engage in advocacy. There's nothing for us to respond to explicitly. But I know that they did put in to the report just some notes, I think, to underscore the importance of the opioid issues and homeless services issues and the needle issues in particular.
Funding is not available at that time. So this is a scenario, just to, again, expound upon it. And maybe we could get Nye involved. That's the chair, for those who are listening, the chair of that committee. To me, the items where they say funding is not available, this is where we should advocate to the mayor's office. I know it was brought up by even other committee members, and I've been called by board members about some of their concerns with how funding was cut for health. So, you know, we could work. I don't know if anything's been drafted. I think that was read too. I might be wrong. Forgive me if I am. And read to me just means that they're writing the same response from last year. And if the responses are online, then I don't see an issue with it. Do you have a comment, Carly or Jennifer?
I don't have a comment. Jennifer hasn't I'm sorry. So Andrew and Xavier both have their hands raised, and I believe Xavier's on the committee too.
Please go ahead, Xavier. I'm sorry, who was the other person? Andrew? Oh, sorry. Xavier, then Andrew.
So one of the things we discussed at that committee is in response to a few of the items and calling out, well, one, let me just go back. I'm switching screens because I'm on a laptop. We had cuts with the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. So our hospital systems, we discussed about how there should be a per capita comparison between the districts. And we used as an example what we discussed with sanitation, with the population density and why there was those discrepancies on a per capita basis. Also, too, we called out the fact that we are in the middle of a pandemic. So cutting those basic um, services were something that we wanted to respond to, and especially given that because of the crises and because of people losing their jobs or the risk of being homeless, that in response to these, they needed to respond back in more detail with why the cuts are being placed, and especially for our at-risk community. The other comment, I know when we had this, and Marlene sits on as our liaison there, I think in any instance where we have the agency does not or cannot give priority funding this request, I think it would be helpful as we go through this process, we push back and say, why not? Why are you prioritizing this when we're calling it out and we put it in a certain order? I know, and this is something we can also reach out to and should be maintaining, as was mentioned at last executive committees, we should be in constant contact with our agency reps. So whoever the chair and vice chair should be in contact and reporting back to the committees so that we keep those relationships up to date. But those were the general comments and just
Thank
calling
you.
out those discrepancies with the population density. So
I'll definitely reach out to Ms. Whitaker and Carly, if you can help out with Marlene. I think we could get that summary in. It might be in somebody's inbox. You know,
probably.
I'm the worst with these. If you call me, talk to me, we could talk for hours. Sometimes I'll have an email drafted for days and just miss the send. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, my question was going to be, I think, in regards to the specific cuts as I'm looking right here. Yeah, I just wanted to know if that was just that they hadn't made it in, because there are specific cuts in that region, and I think that especially given the concerns that that our community and that committee in specific has expressed about drug rehab and about the services that folks who are dealing with addiction are getting, and just the serious problem that is in our city, but in particularly in our district. I just wanted to ensure that I think it was almost 17 million in cuts to health and hygiene, unless I was looking at the wrong part of this large geographic reporting fiscal-wide agency survey for departmental estimates in fiscal year 2022. But I was just wondering.
Check the finance. There's a it's called Revenue Financial Plan. I'll
Okay.
send you the link. That shows the summary of both capital and expense for the entire agency. But I don't think you're off on the line. When you add the 3 zeros, it'd probably be more than 17 million. It might be $1 billion cut. So if they're cutting health $1 billion, I don't need to tell this committee where I think they should cut the other $1 billion from. But
yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, and I was just wondering if it was going to get more specific, but at the end of the day, I mean, these numbers are going to change so much. Just seconding the committee's concerns and just saying, we need a surge in those resources and no cuts. So just making sure we're clear.
I'm with the committee and our committee as well as theirs. I agree to both Andrew and Xavier. Human Services has to have a response. Like it has to have a response. I mean, every item here, they're blaming the budget that the mayor provided. So if they're blaming the budget that the mayor provided, it's not about following up with the Department of Health. It's about advocating to the mayor's office, which is the effort of this letter. So I'm committed to reaching out to the chair, Rakeem, Jennifer, if there's anything you could do to assist, if you've probably caught those notes or something, I'll reach out to you guys tomorrow and gals. And hopefully, we could get something in writing to Carly sooner than later. Because as some of you know, Carly's also managing like 4 other committees that we have no liaisons for. So I definitely want to jump in and help as much as we can.
Jason, I'm happy to write something up. And what's the nature of what we should do in this case? Because I thought if
so each of these items, they're telling you, this is, and I get it's not clear because they're playing with words. They're saying that the agency will try to accommodate this issue within recent existing resources. So that's OMB. That's the mayor's office. And then the agency, when they drill it down, which is actually in this case the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. Why do I feel that that's written wrong? The agency supports this request, but funding is not available at this time. The agency gets its funding from the mayor. So if the mayor is not giving the money, and if it's because it's a state and or federal, it might be a state of bigger issue. This is the effort for us to advocate to the mayor's office as to why I pop in. I don't need to tell any of us. I brought it up at a full board where, you know, the amount of people that are dying in our community because of just, you know, COVID, life conditions, quality of life is astronomical in comparison to other districts. So it's, you know, outside of COVID, health has always been an issue, but where housing was number one, health definitely jumped up in the stats this year. So that makes sense, Rakeem. And we definitely could, I think we should have a further dialogue maybe tomorrow when you got some time.
Okay.
All right. Jennifer, you got anything to add? I don't know if she's on. I'm sorry. I know I keep
sorry, I'm
saying
here. My
Jennifer.
computer.
I keep saying Jennifer. You got
Sorry, can you
anything
hear
to add?
me?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Okay, sorry about that. My computer froze for a second, but yeah, I'm happy to help with that. And I think like Nye was suggesting is having just like some language so that we can let them really like drill it in, that compared to like other areas we're really not receiving the funding and we do have a greater need.
So, as a recommendation, right? And again, I always defer to the chair. I respect our chairs. I would take all these track as opposed to responding to each line item. If you guys have a strong stance, summarize it and put all the tracking codes. I don't know if you want to show, you got a sample of that, Carly, I think with HPD or housing. I think housing did it last year, where they just put all the tracking codes from HPT, where HPD was like, yeah, we'll use existing resources, but we don't have the money. They put them all together and then they wrote like, I mean, I don't want to say half a page, but yeah, it was half a page summary where it was just like, this is unacceptable. And they just gave the statistics. I mean, and needless to say, I was at land use yesterday and they're looking to bring in, HPD's looking for more ways to bring in housing to our district. So, you know, the effort, sometimes I know we don't see the return on the investment, but I promise you it's there. So I would love to work with all three of you tomorrow, you, Jennifer, Rakeem, and to reach out to Nye to figure out, you know, strategically what might be the best. Because if you write it for each item, that might take away from it, but that's my opinion. You know, I'm not the writer here, I promise you. Carly's the best. She's the writer. And I bet, and I know some of you are as well. So if that makes sense, did that answer the question, Rakeem, Jennifer? About maybe a tactic?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to getting something written. I think that's a good tactic to really hammer it home that
Eva,
it's not just a few issues, it's like systemic that they're not funding these things.
I like that word.
Yeah, second.
I like those words. Eva, send your comments to Jennifer or Rakeem. I seen it because it just popped up that you have minutes or something. Send it to Jennifer, Rakeem, myself, CC your chair, and CC Carly, please. And we'll try to review it tomorrow and incorporate it. But the chairs were all told the deadline was the 10th. I don't need to tell you what today is. So, but let's move on. Open space and parks.
So John attends all the meetings. I'm not sure. I mean, I also, John or I can speak to it.
I love to hear from both.
Whatever you prefer.
I think the committee should hear from both. You know, it's always good.
Yeah, well, technically, John's not on the committee.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. But I just want to shout him out because he's been taking his role very seriously and that he attends every single Parks Committee and talks about the budget, and he's not even on it. So I really appreciate.
Go ahead, John. No, trust me. I spoke to John like a couple of weeks ago on the phone, and we talked about that. And John, thank you. You're one of those brothers that go above and beyond the call of duty. And I agree with Carly. I don't know about Carly. I got so spoiled. I thought you were already on Parks.
No. That'll be a fifth committee, Jason.
Yeah, brother.
No, well, the thing is that, listen, the only thing that I said to the committee that, you know, with the budget shortfall this year, the thing is that prioritization is going to be key. And they have the queen of advocacy on that committee. You know that.
Oh yes.
So the thing is that
Dr.
So the thing is that that committee I'm pretty sure they know what they will prioritize if push comes to shove.
Yeah. So as everybody knows, the Esplanade and the Pier, two of the major funding items were funded, like major budget requests that the committee had, they were funded this year. So when the budget register, when the preliminary budget was released, it does not indicate that in the, it doesn't indicate that in the budget register, but still in the response, they did want to make sure to acknowledge that like this was an item that's been on our request list for a decade, and appreciative of the funding. And then just moving from there, I think their top priority was sanitation. If you all recall, when Councilmember Kalos came, he noted the discrepancy between the funding for sanitation between Community District 8 and Community District 11. And they're just our neighbors. So the sanitation piece is not yet done, but I have it written. I have the notes. Jessica has the notes, and we're just gonna throw something together tomorrow, talking about that discrepancy. And then on the park section, like I mentioned, we thank them for the funding for the Esplanade, and we talk about the seasonal staff. They wanted to prioritize the seasonal staff because that was cut during COVID, and those are the main priorities. But we also have something in there about comfort stations.
Thank you. I need not tell. Just to give some of you guys some history. Like I was telling Carly earlier, a lot of our documents came out of parks, just because of I mean, Francis, every chair that committee's ever had, at least since I've been a board member, has just been a champion in advocating for our open spaces and parks. And when you think about it in comparison to, human services and housing, I mean, the reality is without a good quality of life, it definitely affects our district in a numerous amount of ways. So I applaud you, Carly. Thank you for obviously double heading that as staff liaison and, even doing it for us. And if Jessica's on the call, anybody from Parks, thank you again for your efforts. I wanted to think about, I'll talk about crafting the draft at the end, but I do want to think of a way of, as opposed to us doing things alphabetically or numerically, is by basing it off the need of the district. So that certain administrative agencies, and again, this it's just something to think about as we keep going through this. I think they should be bumped, in the response letter. So then that way, if somebody's reading a 6-page response letter, at least our items that are affecting human life and, I mean, what do we need? It's like my mom always tell me, food, clothing, and shelter. And those three things are pretty much not only under attack because of the pandemic, but also because of the inequality for our district. And I think that's something that we should think about in moving in the format of the letter, but it's just something to think about. So we did human services, parks. Is there any other ones there? I'm sorry.
Xavier has his hand raised, but if there's housing, I would love to hear about from housing eventually. There's public safety, which I could speak to, and
that's it.
Xavier, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I do. Before we head into housing, or if you want to do public safety and transportation, I think that we should reach out to Jeremiah and give him a nudge. Both just with the parks and with the Esplanade, I think the way that was worded was a good reply. A lot of people, and again, this has been mentioned, the Esplanade issue has been going on for the longest time. And as East Harlem Community District 11 has one of the highest concentrations of open air spaces, it's something that was a deep passion when I first got on the board, and Francis indoctrinated me on all things parks. So I just want everyone to, even though we're in a pandemic, to be realistic and understanding that it takes a lot of time to get these requests fulfilled. And oftentimes when you'll see, and when we go to housing, when you look at NYCHA, when they say they agree in their funding in part, sometimes that's the council members appropriation, sometimes that's the OMB, the mayor's, and they're putting a couple, they're saving a couple dollars, if you can imagine. So you have a boiler that's getting replaced, and then a couple more dollars get put away. It can't all be done in a single year, and that's what typically happens. And then finally, the project gets greenlit. So with that being said, I just wanted to say it was a big feat, and we just got to make sure we hold their feet to the fire. Yeah, that was the main comment with that.
Thank you, Xavier. And I applaud again everybody on this committee, past, present, and even our future members. You guys will be loving 106th Street one day. I can't tell you when. I know Parks is already on top of the pre-planning phase and getting the study going, but one day we will be walking on that Esplanade, no different than how it looks below 96th Street.
Okay, Jason, one more comment real quick. I've been texting with Nye, who's on a work call. Otherwise, she would have jumped right on with us. There were, during the call, and she said there were some several issues cited, and I'm just going to put them in for the record that were, Marlene was supposed to grab them out of the chat, like what we've been doing, or via email. Robin had put in several, and to add to the tractor there were 2 items. One was seniors and one was a general comment about the items being carried over from previous years. She's going to reach out to Marlene in the morning and then follow up with you. Okay.
No problem. That sounds perfect.
That's the update.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I promise you all, if we drafted live, you would be here at 12 o'clock at night. So that's why we're not doing it. I mean, I don't mind. My wife. No, I'm teasing. Let's keep it moving. I think we got public safety and transportation. I think that argument is sound. You know, Carly, you're there. I know you'll be able to take whatever you got from Jose and his group and bring
That's
it.
done.
Oh, so there you go. Look at
It's
that.
done.
I did see that. I didn't see red on that.
Yeah.
I did read that. It was all the way in the bottom, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's why. See, look at that. Even after I read this thing twice, that escaped me. That's perfect. Anybody have any comments? I think, let me double check the write-up. I like MTA. Oh yeah, I love the response. Now I remember. Any response that says, yes, thank you, I get the thank yous, but thank you, we need this. And that's what I took from what came out of public safety in response to Department of Transportation and MTA. So anybody else have any comments, concerns, questions? Okay, I think that takes care of it. Carly, do you have any other concerns before we go through the format of the narrative? And when I say narrative, I just mean the first paragraph. You know.
Nope.
So format, here's my thoughts. See how you scroll down, it says community boards, Department of Housing Preservation and Development. I don't know how we did that. I don't remember.
By
I don't know.
agency.
Alphabetical order. So it's like D, you know, like example, C, B, D, B, B. You get where I'm going? Is it in alphabetical order? We just threw it there based off of what was on the. So here's the idea. The idea is I think that the items that should be bumped up agency-wise should be reflected by our prioritization, which would be health, housing, and when I say education, I mean youth. So does anybody disagree, comment? In meaning, like, we should have human services at the top. We're in the middle of the pandemic.
On our requests, I'm pretty sure our top requests are housing.
Okay. No, you probably, I'm saying health just because of what's going on with I'm using it as an example, but you get where I'm going, if that makes sense, right? As opposed to community boards being at the top there. I know that was a big argument for us a year ago. And it's always been an argument. We'll constantly keep asking more funding for the boards and as a whole. But example, like in that situation, I would think the Human Services Administrative Agency should jump up there. Or if vice versa, if it is housing, I just don't remember the stats off the top of my head. If it is housing this year, then housing should jump up there. Any comments from the body?
Andrew has his hand raised.
Please.
Yeah, I would just second that we're in a pandemic, and so while I know we're still waiting on some stuff from Health and Human Services, I think that increased funding, a surge in funding to help deal with the pandemic here is essential. We can't possibly be having a conversation about cuts to local clinics or to drug rehab or anything like that. I mean, well, we can, but that's just gonna it's gonna be really damaging for us. As for housing, I mean, this is a larger conversation to have with the housing committee, but and I know we don't, we're still waiting on something, some stuff from them, but on housing, I just think and this is just a personal opinion, there are many ways to go about that. And right now, New York City has more stock many times over of empty units than it does homeless people. Right, we have multiple. We have like 2 or 3 times the units for the number of homeless. So we don't have a supply problem. We have a problem of political will of getting people into those units. So I just wanted to flag that. But just to second how important health is in a pandemic. Yeah.
But it's just something to think about. I don't really hear too much negative, anybody opposing the idea, but it's something that I'll work on you with, Carly, if that helps. I don't want to derail you from, capturing all this data with like what I now think is a more proper formatting.
Yeah, and
I don't think I can edit the document. I might be wrong. I might be using the wrong Gmail account to do it, but I'll try tonight if that helps out. Go ahead, Andrew. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I was just wondering if we were at the point, if we were giving some general suggestions for the intro paragraph. I know we're not going to line by line write it now, but in terms of some statistics to add in, I was wondering if we were at that juncture or not.
I wanted to close out the formatting concern.
Understood.
And again, it's my concern. And it's just, it goes back to what every elected official has said to this body since I've started this committee, let alone the training sessions we did for the last 3 months. They want the big tickets, right? And I think that I don't need to explain to anyone when you're reading something, it's usually that first page or 2 pages that draws you into the book. Very rarely we have that 2-hour attention span. Well, at least I got it, the 2-hour attention span. After past 2 hours, you start losing me. So the same as they said in looking at the document, just think that if the need and that assessment that we did based off of our survey that also prioritized our budget requests should also be utilized in the format of writing out response. And again, that's just the administrative thing. And I don't hear anyone against it. So any comments, anybody?
Oh, Stephanie's hand was raised for a while. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Oh, guys.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
said like 10 minutes ago, I can't see the hand raise function. I'm besides being blind,
My
I
fault.
think, old.
My fault. I keep like going back and forth watching you guys and also reading. So I was like, I'll keep my hand up. Carly will see me, but Carly has shown me no love all day. That's okay. More importantly, I really do think that would, if we've never done that before, where we're putting in the front, like the health, the housing, and the youth portion, I think that's very important. We should put that in the first 2 or 3 pages. But in regards to the housing, I want to kind of understand with the responses that we've already received, the responses from the agencies. And in one of them, they had said there was not enough fund, that they needed more research on it, on the vents. I can't remember which component is that, but they had said that they needed more research on that. I kind of know that they know what they need. So like, is there any way we can get them to like give us a response for that, or are we over that already and just moving forward? Or is that what we can put in the letter?
If I'm sorry, can you read the response one more time? Are they asking for more funding, or they're saying they'll use existing resources? Because the other part, and this is me, I'm learning with you guys. So one of the things I caught is if the mayors say they'll use existing resources, and then in the second response, which usually is coming from the admin agency, they'll tell you, we ain't got the resources. And if they're saying they ain't got, like what you just saw with human services, all of their responses said that they don't have the resources, right? So that's something that should be advocated in this process. At the same time, come June and July, that committee with its liaison, that chair and with its staff liaison will be sitting with those administrative agencies to hold them to account for that, just to give you the visual. So we have two options. If you don't dive into housing, because I caught that myself with land use when one of the items there I thought was relevant to housing, but just as Andrew's sentiment, that seems to be a standing thought process these days in the administration where there's just too much stock. People don't even want to pay their rent. The building next door to me is completely empty from the basement to the 5th floor. So that's my 2 cents.
So the one I was talking about was the number, I believe it's number, it's the only NYCHA one that we have there. So that's number 8, where they're talking, where we're provide funding for the purchase of additional services, vans with additional computers, tablets, and so forth. Right?
2 seconds.
Well, that one, the agency responds that number 8. The request,
number
the
N,
request
you mean
requires.
cell, you mean the cell 8, right?
Yes, cell L. Yes,
Got
sorry.
it.
Yes,
All right,
cell
no
8.
problem. Further study needs to be.
It says
by
that the
8th.
request requires further study.
So that could wait to district consultation. Because they're not saying that they're not saying no, nor are they saying yes. So for clarification purposes, the board needs to speak to that agency, which I know like housing has the most good, at least from what I see, they have packed meetings with NYCHA. So I think it's something
Yeah, we
that
just
you
had
guys
them
can,
recently there.
you guys could just have a conversation right there. What other study you need? The NYCHA gets funded through every way in the world of America, from my understanding. So I don't think they're crying for money as opposed to how to apply it, if that makes sense. So,
Jason?
Yes, sir. Please, John.
Well, the thing is that whenever they say this needs further study, the thing is that I don't know if this is feasible, but the thing is that, and we talked about this in Youth and Education on Tuesday. The thing is sometimes, and some of these needs, some of these requests are kind of obvious. The thing is that sometimes they need the data to be given to them, because the thing is that because some of these requests been here for a long time, and you're still getting the same answer.
Yeah, like I get it, but I get what you're saying, but to split the apples from oranges, because it is all fruit. This request is new. They're being very specific. They're saying the need, and that's where, to me, there needs to just be some coordination between the committee and the administrative agency to figure out if it's a funding challenge. I don't, they say provide funding for the purchase of additional services, vans with additional computers, tablets, and supporting supplies. I guess they want like a remote computer area.
Yeah, it's a digital van. It's a digital van that they use for recertifications.
That'd be great. So like maybe in the conversation when you're prepping for the district consultation, or like I said, to economic development, you can have them come in earlier. But provide them the data that supports your claim. I mean, if we just want vans, I can't speak for the city, but I can speak as a businessman. My employees sometimes want iPad 10s. Well, the Samsung is $700. Right? I don't know if the city is going to argue that they already provide, whatever's their debate, NYCHA's debate. The conversation needs to happen, if that makes sense. That I don't think that item needs to be responded to in this letter. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, no, it does. Okay.
Okay. Sorry. So thank you,
Stephanie. So really quick. So I'm sorry, really
please,
quick.
Because we need housing. So please take over.
What about what about cell 3, which is the first cell? The one about providing Oh my God, I just started messing around with it.
They're
Providing
saying
the,
they'll use existing resources, and then their blatant response, which seems that they copied and pasted but missed the whole edit, it still will accommodate with existing resources. That's another district consultation. And it's funny because this item is both in this, it's written differently, but it's the same. Land use has the same item. And it was actually brought up too yesterday at land use about when people say that to provide housing for disability personnel, they're only thinking about ADA as opposed to mental or emotional. So it's
Yes.
definitely a conversation that needs to continue happening. Not necessarily in this committee, but housing definitely should push for it. And if they need any assistance in their district consultation, I'll be more than willing to show them that this request has been asked repeatedly. That's something else I've been looking at. See, what ends up happening as we keep going through this process, we refine, we get better, is what I've been trying to like, see how, I love how Carly's showing new tracking versus old tracking. So it shows you it has a history. And if it has a history, at what point are you getting boilerplated responses? Makes sense? And that's where youth and education's complaining, because I know, because I was on that committee and creating some of these spreadsheets. When we were doing it, you know, the response, I went back 5 years just for my own edification, and the responses were exactly the same. Now, through that grassroots work and that advocacy, now Youth and Education has the superintendent showing up, DOE, DYCD, SY, every organization, at least from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Carly or Jason, is always at Youth and Education attesting and accounting for the budget. So I think, you know, in my opinion, the advocacy worked just. So I would propose the same efforts for housing. And I know they do. I know Knights is a good player. I don't know how HPD's been this year.
HPD is now.
They've been good to land use. I don't know how they're doing at housing. So maybe we need to, the pretty word, cross-committee team collaboration, and start sending, if HPD's coming to land use or something, then maybe they should get kicked to housing. But that's an executive conversation that I'll share with the other chairs, because I think that we should look at requests, but you know, that's not something that I would address in this letter, if that makes sense.
Okay.
No more questions, Carly? If not, then it's Andrew's show for the
We have Andrew's hand raised and we have Giselle's hand raised.
Giselle, then Andrew.
Jason, I know that you said afterwards, but I think so. The only agency that I think we're having a little bit of a problem with is SBS, because we have so many requests and we're getting similar answers from them, and we have not been able to get in touch with them. We've wrote them like several emails. I know Angel's reached out, Marissa. If we don't get, let's say if we don't get any
You don't
response
need the administrative agency to add, where this letter is us advocating for that agency. So if the agency is not responding, that's the discretion of the chair. Do you want to assist that agency and keep advocating for them? Or your interpretation is that agency's financially stable? That's not something that I think we could figure out right at this moment. So I definitely think we should look at it a little bit further tomorrow, if that works for you.
Okay.
Mr. Padilla.
This was quick. I know that there isn't, it doesn't appear to be on the housing tracking list a specific, or unless I'm missing it, like I see a tracking code here at the top and on the bottom. Maybe I'm missing it. With regards to NYCHA beyond the additional services for vans, is there another tracking code for NYCHA that I'm just not seeing on my, or is that the
Well,
only?
I don't see it. It's not on the tracker.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's fine if there isn't something specific, but I just wanted to make sure. I see that this is in red, and I just wanted to confirm that the the summary for housing remains in, because I think it's good and I think it's important that we just make it clear that NYCHA is not only severely underfunded, but this pandemic has only taken more money from NYCHA because, just like private landlords are suffering, NYCHA's been getting a lot less rent money. Its residents are dying disproportionately. So I just want to make sure that maybe we highlight awareness of those two things, and just that summary remains, even though, as I said, I don't see an extra, like a specific item, but that was all. Because I saw it was in red, so I just wasn't sure if it was going to.
It's a good flag, Andrew. Your comments noted. When I speak to the chair tomorrow in my attempts in concluding this, I'll give him that recommendation. I definitely leave that discretion though to the chair of the committee, if that makes sense. And Jeremiah wrote that one last year, so I'm more than certain he'll want to keep it in
right.
this year.
That's why it's red. Right. I forgot. We're still waiting for something on housing.
Yeah.
Okay. And I have
but it's good.
that.
It's good, like what you said, in the event that we're not able to, we do have a starting point. But
yeah, in the event
it
there isn't
seems
an
Stephanie's on top of it. Like, that's why we're here. If we get involved, if for whatever reason there's a complete and utter, I don't have another pretty word for it, failure that we don't get something that we think we need to respond to at a budget advocacy capacity, if that makes sense. So we're doing the work, but you guys are doing great. So I got you the comment about the paragraph, and to ensure that they stay with the emphasis about NYCHA.
Just that they stay with the emphasis on NYCHA, and then just as a suggestion that maybe they add in that NYCHA's been disproportionately harmed. There's been tons of articles about how COVID has specifically hit NYCHA folks, and how NYCHA folks have just been abandoned by the city through this. But right, I forgot that this is last year's text. So
thank you, Andrew. But it's still your go. You want to go with the draft back, if you don't mind, Carly? I think the draft is still up. I jumped on another screen. Yeah, I was looking at the budget tracker. Do you want to talk more about I'm sorry, forgive me. It was the introductory paragraph that people were.
I had some suggestions for it. Yeah, unless there's someone unless I just talked out of turn. I wasn't sure if you were talking to me.
I was. I know you brought it up before. That's why. We dealt with the format. So if we want to talk about the introductory paragraph, I leave that I defer to you guys, to the body.
Yeah, I just wanted to put some suggestions up for the body and see what people thought about adding a few things in here. So the first, just in background, okay, there's three things. I just want to ask a clarifying question. How much are we getting into the broader budget? So for instance, I was reading an IBO report, which I literally just got before we got on this meeting, Independent Budget Office report. And so I just looked at it, and then I pulled this one piece out of it. So I just want to know if this would be relevant for this or not. But it said the IBO report, and I can email that to you guys now. It said that at the end of 2020, New York City had 557,000 fewer jobs than at the end of 2019. So that we experienced a job decline of 11.9% in the city. And we know that's a job decline, and that's not even thinking about all the people who have less hours. That's not even thinking about all the people who are just in more precarious work situations.
Can you write that?
Yes, so write it.
Send it to me and Carly. It might not be for verbatim, but I like the stats already. So go ahead.
Yeah, so then that would just be, so it would be saying that and say, while we are encouraged, the city has announced it has no current plans for mass layoffs.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I mean, what is that?
11,000, they're going to get fired. They're going to get rid of them.
They're going to, right. So what we're saying is that, so we should have a comment about their proposed for, how they plan to do layoffs, but then also just that their notion that they're going to reduce headcount by around 5,000 through attrition, and that most agencies will be asked to only make new hires. So one new position.
So I would try to keep it I'm with you. I love
Yeah.
where you're going, but I would try, as Xavier has taught me a long time ago, sometimes we got to land the jet, right? So I would
Right.
try to keep it as finite and defined to our district as possible with our priorities. I'm already for the civil servants. I'm already for unemployment because I need not tell you I'm a workforce developer, job developer in the district. But with that said, I will put my advocacy to the side in the interest of, like, health and like
Yeah.
housing, right?
Gotcha.
So I love the points. I again, not to bleed everybody else's clock out here. You guys know I love hanging out with you, but I'd rather in person than online. So with that said, just write it up, send
Okay,
it to
great.
me
I'll
and
write it up and
Carly,
we'll see where that lands.
and I promise you, somehow, some way we'll incorporate. And I ask the same of every committee member here. But Andrew, the first one, without a doubt, I think
Okay.
should be emphasized because it starts drawing the attention to, if the city got impacted this way, imagine a disenfranchised, disproportionate, all the words for our district. That is like, imagine what we're going through, right?
Great.
And it's not that easy to see unless you go through, like they took the mayor on a Sunday through 125th Street in the middle of Pan. Diane said that to us. And with that said, like, you'd think we get more funding.
So,
But,
so that was one point. Just noting the jobs, even if it's just that one line about the decline, that'd be fine. Then the other thing is, I think we do need to mention that 118 billionaires in New York saw their net worth jump 77.3 billion in the first 3 months of the pandemic. U.S. billionaires across the country have actually added more than $1 trillion to their wealth during the pandemic. This could be just a sentence or two. I have citations for that. I can send that. I just thought that it's important that our board make clear that we are very well aware of how this moment is being used to redistribute wealth, but in the other way. So I'll send that and we'll see where that lands, unless there's an objection to me just sending that.
no, send it. If the objection will come if we don't put it in. Just
Right.
don't take it personal, all right?
No, okay, yeah. So I mean, is there an objection to the idea of us mentioning that?
I necessarily don't, but it's something that a conversation should happen with the chairs. How far they want to reach with that, and defending that. I definitely there is that sentiment that's already understood in the administration. Luckily for us, at least in New York City, in comparison to other cities. But I don't see any no harm, no foul. I always say, if you guys stated a statistic or a fact, just back it up. And you say you got the citation. It's just, remember, when Carly is getting to the point where she's going to click send for us to vote on this in next Tuesday, we want it 100% done. So with that said, context might not feed the concept, if that makes sense. Like the data, if she's driving the way she's writing it. So I'd recommend you reach out to Carly and have some more conversations about it.
Great.
As
So
well as myself, you could
send
call
that
me.
to everyone. I'll send that to everyone because I don't think it's necessarily us taking a position on what to do about it. It's simply saying, hey, this transfer of wealth happened, and we need to make sure we're not cut. But so that's just one thing. That's just more on background. The other thing is more specifically something I would like the committee's thoughts on. I'm not, one type of way about it, but this is something that is not background. This is our committee feeling a type of way about this, and it's an approach question. So the question is, if we should put something in that says to the effect of, our board understands the city doesn't know how much they will get from the state, and the state doesn't know how much they will get from the federal government. What we demand is New York do their part to make sure that billionaires pay their fair share. We cannot balance the budget on the backs of the most vulnerable. And we ask the city to let our board know how they suggest we advocate at a state and federal level for the stimulus funds we need and the tax increases we'll need to get there. So that's a question of just approach as to whether we want to throw that back at the city and be like, look, you guys are going to tell us that the state didn't give you the money. You guys are going to tell us the feds didn't give you the money. And then you're going to say you don't have the money for us. Well, our community board is letting you know, we're asking, if you think it would be helpful for us to get on a Zoom with federal officials in DC, we'll do that. You think it'll be helpful for us to get on a Zoom with Cuomo and talk about what specifically is going on in our district? We'll do that. But it's not enough for you to say in a couple months they didn't give us the money. Yes, that's a reality we know could happen, but we're letting you know on our end that we're going to push you, right? But we know that part of this isn't all you, and we're willing to help you push the others in the interim. And thinking that, I don't know, that's just a question of approach. I don't know if that's been done. I don't know if people think that's not worth our time. I don't know.
I agree with you, Andrew. I agree with you, Andrew. I think it's important for us to put that in both as context, and I think it puts pressure on our city officials to put pressure on our state officials. So I agree with both suggestions that you made.
Thank you, Jason. Because that's the thing, we're going through this budget process, and part of me feels almost like it's silly because we actually, we don't know those things. The mayor's talking at his ass. Cuomo's talking at, because at the end of the day, everyone's waiting on someone else. And so I think that if our community is able to articulate that and say, we're willing to work strategically, we're going to hold you accountable, but we're willing to help strategically in the months ahead. And from a specifically of how this impacts our district, I think that, I don't know, I want to know other people's thoughts on that approach. And I appreciate Jason's comments.
I mean, this document
I'll give you all a loud thought. The letter is going to the mayor.
And we should send it to all our other elected officials for this district too.
It will go to them as well.
And that's the thing, the mayor might ignore it, but you might have our state officials say, you know what, I've got a call coming up with Cuomo in a couple weeks. And, does CB11 want to get in on the call and talk about how, this cut Cuomo's thinking about making is going to affect? Because at some point, Cuomo's going to, we have to push our state legislators, but there's going to come a point where Cuomo's going to cut them out too and do what he wants anyway. So it's a matter of, pushing, I don't know, other thoughts?
So I like it, as long as we're not, I don't know how to say this right, but I like it as long as we're also putting the urgency on us. Like, we're willing to do the work. I love that. We're willing to do the work and push forward with you to make sure that we're getting the funding from the right people so we get what we need. I like that idea. I just don't want it to become something where we're just like, we know billionaires have money, you should take it from them and give it to us, because that might be a problem.
Well, I think it's important to mention the context, but I agree. It's one thing to say there has been a over $1 trillion redistribution of wealth, and it's another thing to say that our elected officials are blaming their cuts on that redistribution of wealth, and it's another thing to say our community is willing to help these electeds fight that redistribution.
Yeah.
And then the question then becomes at a committee level, are we? And I don't know, is that just something we're saying and we figure they'll never respond? But is it something at a committee level that we would be willing to do together? And if we would, then I think it's a way of, it's not just that we're saying screw de Blasio or screw Cuomo. No. I mean, we're saying we're willing to help you if this is the problem, if the problem really is this huge redistribution of wealth. The mayor put this in his budget, preliminary budget proposal. He said this to the city. He's like, look, that's what the city needs to, we need to tax it, la, 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 la. Okay, so you're just saying this, but so where do our community needs come into it? And by advocating on a state and federal level on these issues, then if the ball gets dropped there, the city's well aware of what our needs are, but we've been partners in that process as well. It's just a thought. We love other people's thoughts.
I definitely like it. I just, like I said, I feel that as long as we're putting the urgency on, we're working with you, and maybe even adding that, like you said, if we have where the mayor's quote saying this is the problem, we can say that, Mayor de Blasio, as you stated in whatever, in your state of what you said this, and we want to move forward in campaigning that by doing this. I think that would be great.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, yeah, I don't know if it was this report was this morning. They stated that Joe Biden has authorized 100% reimbursement for everything COVID related. So, whereas 6 months ago during the previous administration was 75%. That's the point I'm emphasizing, right? When are we? I get the advocacy. I just don't want to get into the game of and I might not be using the proper terminology of politicizing it. I want them to look at the document and take it seriously to start sitting down with us, right? It has been these processes that we've been going through together in the last year that has resulted in us advocating to our local officials and having them advocate for us to get some of the things that we've been getting. So I'm not against, I don't, it's something that needs to be crafted. You have a very short window to do it, and it just needs to be on point. It can't be, you guys know what I'm saying, Andrew. It can't be something that someone's going to shoot back at you and say, okay, well, you said the mayor said that, and then guess what? Yesterday, which is a fact, now he's saying, oh, we're funded. So
No, and
even in that IBO, they said if they get 100%. I think they said only at this stage the independent study showed 75%, but that report was January 15th. Versus the new executive order that was issued in the beginning of February. I guess the point is I don't want to get too widespread in the cast. If we could keep it to New York, and you think that, that's a tactic that it can assist our district, I don't see why you can't recommend it. And
my question was more,
those that are in agreement with it, I think that you should work collectively with Andrew to get something to same thing. You guys did the same thing, the same type of scenario last year, so we could do it this year the same way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just want to say this idea came from the mayor's preliminary budget slides. He said 120. He actually, I don't know if his math was wrong or different. I came up with 118, but 118 billionaires in New York saw their net worth jump by 77.3 billion. And then Forbes came out with an article a couple weeks ago that said U.S. billionaires have added more than $1 trillion. So if we're just saying that wealthy people, we have to tax the wealthy, that in itself isn't necessarily the answer. And because, and it's not that is, I'm not discrediting that idea, but at the end of the day, if New York City is the only one, yeah, well, then that does put it at a competitive disadvantage from other states that aren't doing the same, because every single zip code, every single county and state in this country is in a beggar thy neighbor competition with each other to lower their taxes, to lower regulations, because there's no federal standard. So, this is our community board saying, look, we understand.
And this board, just to edify the concept, not to interrupt you, because I definitely want to get the meeting moving. A resolution came out of housing to that same decor last year with taxing the rich, and it's definitely something that this board has supported in the past. I could pull that document up for you. I know that a few of the housing members are here were part of that resolution. I was against it, not necessarily because of the rich, but because I was more concerned about the middle class getting taxed. But with that said, this board has taken that position in the past. So I don't see anything that would reject the notion of us putting that in introductory. I'm trying to think of how it's going to look. But we won't know until we put it on paper, if that makes sense.
I'll send it along and see what people think.
I think that's it. I think that's perfect. Thank you, Andrew.
Jason, I have
great dialogue. I'm sorry, like I said in the beginning.
Yeah, I know you can't see, so I'm just.
There's something wrong with the function on my Zoom and my computer.
No, depending on the type of computer and processor, you can't update or upgrade sometimes, or just on the iPad, it's hard to share screens. Yes, we did pass that resolution. 2, where would it go? I think that's, I think we should double check with Angel seeing how that can be incorporated. I do think there is some worth, because it is relevant right now at the federal. So at federal government, they are discussing, and I'm sorry if I missed this because my internet reset. I had to go do the whole unplug the router and back in again. The salt and what was in our state, our tri-state area was exempt. We were capped. So one of the things they're lobbying for is because we're disproportionately higher property valuations here, there are negotiations going on with allowing for salt exemptions. So that way the states would be liberated to then possibly take under consideration increasing taxes to fill some of the coffers and especially the more high net worth individuals. Those are simultaneous tracks happening right now. I think it is something worth noting that the fair taxation and contribution to society could be included, but I think at this point, I think those conversations are ongoing. I think our larger part is that if it's going to how it will dovetail into our response to these budget requests. And so back to the comment, sorry, the dogs talking in the background, but how that would dovetail with this response to our agencies and how we would be able to cite that. And again, it's just like when we take positions, whether a resolution or whatnot, we use the citations, the reference points on the positions we've taken long-term. So that's all. Like if we're going to incorporate something like that, it's like making sure that we're using statistics and facts as we go along in the response. So that was my only comment to that part of the process. But
Can you hear me? I'm sorry. Thank you, Xavier, for that. Andrew, I'll get you the resolution that was crafted last year, so then that way it assists in whatever you send to the team. And make sure to include Carly, because at the end of the day, that's how all this data is going to be summarized. It just got to make sense when it's read. And that's why I'm saying I'm not discrediting the notion. I just want it to be understood, like just understand the narrative of the topic of discussion for this particular letter. And I want to use all that information to further, you know, I don't have a better term, to make our letter look sexy. I want it to look, I want it to be impressive when they read it, and that somebody's going to want to read through it and take us seriously. So if we can utilize those types of data points and make sure that we can coincide, I personally, I'll never tell you guys no. So anybody else? Carly,
There's a hand up in chat. Eva has her hand raised.
please. Eva, go ahead. I'm sorry. I can't see the thing.
Thank you. Just want to repeat what I said on the chat. We might want to consider asking for the 1.2 billion subsidies. The city used East Harlem zip code for lower income ratio to give to Hudson Yard development. I hope all of you know about this.
Noted. Thank you, Eva. It's not something that'll go into this letter, but it's something that's being tracked by the board. Appreciate it.
But why not though?
What, the $1.2 billion subsidies? I mean, we want to utilize that as a part of what concept of this letter to respond to the city. We want to use a project that happened, that the funding that they took from our city, put it over there. We want to tell the mayor because of that. And how's that going to help these agencies?
Well, I think it dovetails what Andrew said, right? We're asking for a bigger share than normal of the city's budget because we're disproportionately impacted in the pandemic. So that is one other reason why we should get a disproportionate share of the budget.
Okay.
It doesn't matter what budget people are getting, but if we used to get 1%, maybe we should get 2% this year.
Either send it in writing to me and my colleagues so I can see how you're referencing it with our letter to the mayor. Anybody have any comments relevant to Eva's recommendation?
Stephanie, real quick, I understand where you're coming from. I just don't I guess I kind of have to see how it works as well, because I don't know how that would articulate our request, because we're basically, the mayor basically said, this is what I'm gonna give out. And we're saying, okay, but we want you to give out this, and this is why we want you to give it out. I mean, I guess we could say you know, for lack of better terms, you took money from us before, you should give us money back. But I don't know, I guess it depends on how it looks.
Yeah, I don't think that any of us disagree with the sentiment. It just, again, it needs to be logical when it's put together on paper, when it's read. So
Well, I
send your
thought at the last
comments.
school board
I'm
meeting,
sorry. I'm sorry, I
I
couldn't
thought
hear.
at the last full board meeting, when Ben Kalos's office was going through various breakdowns regarding the funding, we already know that our district gets proportionally less when you look at various agencies like sanitation. And so I guess my point is just, I don't even think we need to get to the argument regarding something like the Hudson Yards project, where we know these subsidies go to luxury developers and whatnot
Air
in
rights,
high-end
yep.
neighborhoods. Like we just looking at the city budget itself, we already know that we're consistently underfunded. And the agencies that we rely on, whether it's housing or homeless services, those are underfunded agencies. And so our district is underfunded. The agencies we rely on are underfunded. Like all of that is already there. And so I don't know if maybe we want to hit that point a little bit harder.
I love how you said it, honestly.
And I also just want to touch upon what Eva is mentioning, the $1.2 billion. I believe that you're referring to the funding that went to Hudson Yards through that visa program. And it's not to say that that's not a concern of the community board. I think it has actually been, it was mentioned as it was happening, and I'm not sure if there was an action taken on it, but I will say that it's not particularly relevant to this conversation about the preliminary budget. And I also think it would introduce a lot of complications that I don't know that we even fully understand, because that funding was a result of a visa program. I just don't think it belongs in discussion about the preliminary budget. But that's just my personal opinion.
And I don't disagree. I mean, that's why Eva send it so we could look at it. And more importantly, whether the issue is relevant to this or if it has to be tackled by another committee, we'll definitely look at it. Things like that are usually dealt with housing and land use. And if that was something, it should be, housing hasn't sent their write-up. So maybe they can include that in their write-up.
So just one point about the Hudson Yards project, which I think is a little bit separate, but to the extent that our community board wants to follow up on that, the article that I put in the chat talks about how Public Advocate Williams called on Governor Andrew Cuomo to investigate how the subsidies were used in that project, which took funds from our district and put it towards the Hudson Yards project. And so to me, if we want to follow up on that issue, I think that's a separate maybe investigation that, you know, our elected officials should be doing. And so I don't know what the actual outcome of that investigation was, or if one had even been done. And so maybe that's something we as a community board would want to request from either the governor's office or any of our state elected officials to follow up on.
Thank you, Jason. So does anybody have any other comments or concerns with the draft letter to the mayor? The letter to comment. Thank you, everyone. I think this was very, very insightful, useful dialogue, very, very, very informative. And I'm looking forward to a lot of the emails from the commitments that we made today. I saw something in the chat about the chairs. I'm just calling them. This ain't a formal meeting, just to let you all know. Same way I call you guys. I'm gonna call them and see if there's just anything that there may be some misunderstanding, misclarification, or They just need, they may need some direction, whatever the challenge is. And it's the same, I ask you all to do the same. You know, human services, I know we needed something, and housing. So, Carly, you got anything else? I know we blew your 20-minute mark. I'm sorry, but I felt like we had to go through it. So everybody's well
No,
versed.
yeah, I don't have anything else, just that the full board meetings on Tuesdays and the office is closed on Monday. So time is of the essence. Excuse me. Wow. Time is of the essence. It's been-
I'm gonna speak, wait, today's the 11th. So yeah, if it's not in tomorrow, it's over. All right, Carly, I'll talk to both the chairs that we're missing stuff from. And I'll speak to, if you want, I mean, I think if we don't get if you know, we can't use people's personal time. If you can't draft it and get it done by tomorrow, then it's not, and the board needs to see this, and it can't be the day of the board meeting. We'll be there for 4 hours redrafting the whole letter. So,
What time tomorrow?
it's a good question. Carly, it's your clock.
I mean, we clock out at 5.
I don't want to wait till the last minute.
Yeah, I give Angel a call, I would say.
I will. I'm gonna say right now by lunchtime, Stephanie.
Okay.
All right. I'll reach out to and again, at least for housing, there's 3 to 4 bodies on this committee that can step up, and same for human services. And you guys know I'll do every and anything I can. I'm not working tomorrow, so I'll deal with this for the board. Any questions, further concerns? Any birthdays? My son's gonna be 13 on the 15th. It's crazy, right? I don't have no other announcements except for what's brought up here. Because this committee did not vote on this letter will go under new business at full board. At committee, if you see something in the letter, please don't wait till full board to bring up the issue. I beg you, please do not be the committee member that's a part of this committee that waits till the full board to bring up any challenges. Not saying it's never happened. And I'm just saying, I know that now because this is, though, the shortest window we've had for this, at least in the last 2 years. So if there's concerns, call me, text me, let's figure it out. And hopefully this document can be finished 100% by tomorrow, end of business day, and for us to digest over the weekend. And that's pretty much it, because come full board meeting, we have to vote on this in order for us to ratify it. So there's no more other comments or questions. Carly?
Nope.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good long weekend.
Night.
Happy
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.